Hello, this is Angelia with today's wisdom. Today's wisdom comes from Daily Ohm in the air, spending time in nature. And I do that whenever I can. I like being, out in nature. I like walking in the woods. I like the sunshine. You probably can't tell. I don't get out much, except on the weekends in spring and fall. Sometimes in summer when it's not too hot. I used to have a nice golden tan when I was younger, and not anymore. You can maybe tell I'm still olive skinned, but the golden tan is not happening anymore. In this modern age, we spend so much time indoors, focused on the busyness of our lives. And that's true. We're usually taking care of business at an office or a workplace, and we're not thinking about, being part of nature, which we are, and disconnected from this earth. And that's a problem with a lot of folks who, have made a life for themselves that doesn't include nature, and they just assume, nature's going to take care of itself, this plant's going to take care of itself, or, it's us for, God gave it to us, to use, until they use it all up, and then they won't have one. That's going to be a rude awakening for them. So unfortunately that's true nowadays. But much of what we truly need can only be found under the naked sky. I used to lay out and I'd look at the sky and watch the clouds. When I was a kid, I used to look at the clouds, lay in the backfield, look at the clouds and see what they look like, rhino or whatever. Sometimes when my son was playing ball and they had a pause on or timeout or whatever, I'd still look at clouds and stuff. And my husband and I, we love looking at the night sky. On our farm, you can see all the stars. There's no light pollution down there on the farm. So you can see all the stars and it's gorgeous. And I've seen pictures of, the stars in Hawaii out there where it's 2,000 miles away from everything. And I would love to go, live there and see all those stars every night. That would be happy for me. I love looking at the stars, always have. Alongside tall trees or open plains or in the sound of running water. And like I said, I like walking through a forest path. I love looking up at the dappled sun through the trees. To me, that's just beautiful. Open plains, not so much. I really don't care for that view. Now, I have an uncle, he loves the mountains, and, he loves that kind of a view, and, I know other people who do too. But to me, the open plains usually just means, like, ticks and stuff. Not my cup of tea. And, of course, running water. I love being by any water, any running water, in an ocean especially. I love the ocean. To me, that's where I belong. I belong next to that. I don't know whose idea it was to move inland and live in here without the ocean, but they were dumb in my opinion. Spending time in nature allows us to commune with other living beings and to find comfort in the nurturing embrace of Mother Earth. And again, we do share this planet with other living beings. A lot of people don't care for that, and they don't even like other living beings. I know women here are like scared of animals. They hate all animals. And it's like, what is wrong with you? I like all little animals. They're our little friends. They're our little buddies. I think that's pretty cool. If, like, I'm on the farm, a little lizard comes to visit. Little butterflies come and sit on my shoe for a while and then go away. A little frog will come up there. On our farm, we have some of what I call the Lucas spiders, the jumping spiders. And sometimes they'll come right up to you and they'll hop on you and look at you like, what you up to? And you'll be like, hey, what's up? Because as long as you don't present a threat to them, they're not going to worry about you. You're too big to bother biting. It's a waste of their, time. So they'll just kind of check you out and then they'll go on somewhere else. They're just wondering, hey, what are you doing here? Are you a threat? Are you just chilling? What's going on here? So, and the birds, I don't know if any of you feed the birds, but if you do, the birds start to expect that, and then they'll come, sit on your porch or by your tree where you put stuff, and they'll be like, tweet, 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 tweet. They'll be like, hey, we're here, if you got some food for us, put it out. We're ready to eat it. And like the fish in our pond, we have bluegill in our pond down on the farm, and As soon as you walk up to the pond, whoosh, they gather right there at the entrance because they're like, okay, we're ready to be fed now. Because, they have personalities and they learn things. So, to me, people who don't like animals, there's something wrong there. Just that's not natural. You can't help but experience a different sense of self while walking in a wood or traversing a mountainside. And you do, because it puts you in touch with nature. Like I say, I like walking in the woods. We have deer and coyotes on our farm, which, in all honesty, we don't care for either one because the deer eat our plants, so that's not cool. And the coyotes, of course, we maybe are planning on having chickens one day, and if we do, that's going to be, something that we'll have to worry about them. But, they come running through the field, and they'll, go to the bathroom right in the middle of the field while you're sitting there, it's like, what are you going to do about it? But, they were howling one night, and it sounded like they were up in our front woods by the road, and we were there for the night, and we were watching the meteor shower. We couldn't see it really well because, there were clouds. But when I used to go to the zoo, with my parents when I was young, I used to howl with the timber wolves. And so I let out one of those, and suddenly the coyotes got quiet and they left. So evidently they didn't care for that. Being in nature connects us to the earth. And it does. We are, as the saying goes, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. From earth you came, to earth you will return. So, we are part of the earth. And people who don't believe that, are having some delusions of grandeur, because you are. Grounding us as we walk, unhindered by concrete, upon her. So, if you can go out and walk on a nature trail or something, that is so much better on your feet. I mean, when I was younger, I didn't even like walking on the concrete. I would walk in the grass, because to me, that felt more normal. And it might be because I'm flat-footed, so that the concrete is not as friendly to me as the softer earth is. Surrounded by other living beings, both bigger and smaller than we are, we remember that human beings are simply one form of life in this vast universe. And that's true. We're just one form of life. If you think about all the other forms of life, if you want to, Google how many forms of life are there, they probably don't even know. But we're just one. On planet Earth, we are the highest of all creature for now. Who knows? God might decide, this ain't, but supposedly we're it. We're the attainment. But we are made of the same stuff that the other animals are made of. And they have thoughts and feelings too. Anyone who doesn't believe that is ignorant. If you ever have a dog, cat, they do. We need to keep that in mind, that we are just part of nature here on Earth. Because we instinctively know that nature is good for us on many levels, it's not unusual to feel powerfully drawn to it. And I always have. My husband and I, we used to, on dates, we would go on weekends to parks, to a forest nearby. We actually got married at that forest. And we always have loved walking in the woods and, being part of nature. So for us, that's just normal, and we are drawn to it. Even if you live in a city or find it difficult to travel to a forest or the countryside, there are myriad ways to reconnect with nature. And like I say, where I live, we have 2 forests, pretty close. And of course we have parks. We have one of the bigger park systems, in our state. So, it's not hard for us to get out and reconnect with nature. But, if it's not something that's, close to you, that's something that you can look into. It's maybe a state nearby, or maybe on vacation, go to somewhere where there is a lot of nature. my son's ex-in-laws, they would rent cabins, and they had a camper and everything, and that's where they would go on vacations, because he was an engineer and stuck in a building all the time. They really liked going out and doing things. When you step out of your door each morning, pause for a minute and close your eyes long enough to let your senses absorb your surroundings. And when I had chairs out on my front porch, and we actually had to move them to the garage because people were stealing people's chairs off their front porch. I guess they were selling them for the metal. I don't know. But I was like, no, those are my grandma's chairs that were on her porch, so I don't want those to get stolen if I can help it. So we locked them up, which is a shame. But I used to sit out there in the mornings after I had breakfast and look at the sun and the clouds and the sky and, the flowers and the birds and everything. So I do kind of miss that. And at my next house, we're going to be doing that. So listen and breathe deeply until you hear the wind rustling through branches, smell rain on the damp grass, and see the reflections of leaves brushing up against the window panes. And excuse me. That is a good way to center yourself as well. That's something I used to tell my coaching clients is, to go close your eyes. What do you hear? What can you smell? Then open your eyes and what do you see around you? What do you feel underneath, your thighs where you're sitting, to reconnect and center for a moment, because, that helps with anxiety and depression and, just feeling out of control. If you have time, crouch down and closely examine any nearby grass and soil. And kids just do this instinctively. I know my kids would just come out there and look in the grass, see what bugs they could see. Mom, look, a roly-poly. Or, ew, look, a worm. That's just something they do. But a lot of grown-ups, we don't even think about that. So, the sights, sounds, smells, and sensations we experience that are a part of nature can remind us of all the gifts Mother Earth grants us each day. People don't think about that. They take it for granted. If we did not have the earth, you would not be breathing the air that you're breathing. Your lungs would collapse and you would die. If we did not have the water that you drink, even if it's in coffee, tea, or a soda that you're drinking, because a lot of people, I don't drink water. Well, it's in something you're drinking because it's liquid, so it has water in it. But if you didn't have that, you would quickly dry up and die. Your blood would not circulate. So people kind of take things for granted. And the food, we're seeing this a little bit now with this craziness going on, with everything being tariffed to death. And they're definitely not sustainable. It's about time he did realize that. But, if you don't have food to eat, you'll quickly die. So, spending time connecting with nature nourishes the soul, reminds you that you are never truly alone, and renews you by attuning you to the earth's natural rhythms, which we have gotten out of touch with, and that's why people think like Native Americans or, the old Irish folks were like magic, because they were so in tune with nature. They knew what rock could help with what plant was good for healing what. But it's because they were in tune with their environment. So they knew what, by trial and error probably, what was good for what. And modern day folks are not that way at all. I used to go to a spiritual center where, they had workshops and things teaching you what you could eat, what you couldn't eat, what this was good for, what that was good for. And I found that, very interesting, because I have a few books on stuff like that. And to me, like I say, I'm planning on being out in the middle of nowhere, living. The closest town is like 22 minutes away. So, it would just be as easy for me to grow my own and make my own as it would be to drive into town. Of course, if I break a leg or something, that's going to require a trip to the hospital. But, I've always been into natural healing and like natural healing stuff. So that's probably how it'll be. I used to try and do stuff like that in my yard, and this is not the best neighborhood going. And people would steal my plants and flowers and food. We tried to have a garden and people were stealing that. So, we're kind of stuck here for now. And we can't really do that without people stealing from us. And that's a shame that, people want to come into your garden and steal your food. But that's the situation here in this city that I'm living in. Taking a walk under the stars or feeling the wind on your face, which I love both of those things, may be all it takes for you to reconnect with nature. And my favorite thing, we used to go down to Florida. We haven't been going so much here in the past couple of years because, the money and time was just not there. But that's my favorite thing, is to feel the wind from the ocean. And we go out on the beach at night. My husband would crab hunt with a flashlight. We didn't keep him. We just wanted to see him. But, and to see the stars over the ocean and to feel the breeze. I mean, listen to the waves. That's happiness, to me. So, remember, you are as much a part of nature as are the leaves on a tree. And that's true because, we were made by God, just like the tree was made by God and the leaves are made by God. Yes, I know they propagate, and if you believe in just evolution, then you might think that's how that came about. But I believe in creation and evolution. I believe God created the first things, and then they evolved. And a lot of religious people get on me for that because you can't believe in creation and evolution. But well, yes, you can, because it would be kind of dumb for God to create plants and animals that couldn't evolve and adapt to their environment, wouldn't it? And God's not dumb, is he? No. If you think God's dumb, you can tell him that. I'm not going to even be around when you tell him that. So, yeah. So, spending time in nature, in the open air, can help you to reconnect to your home, your planet Earth. Think about it. Please like and share this wisdom so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. Thanks for watching. That's all for now. Until next time.